Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Scott and today this video is going to be focusing on a SharePoint tutorial. So we're going to look at how better you can manage your files and documents using SharePoint Online. Personally, I started using SharePoint 13 years ago, and over those years I went from a novice to actually going all the way to running my own Microsoft 365 consultancy company, focusing a lot on SharePoint Online. So I certainly know 12, 13 years ago how it felt when I didn't know too much about the world of SharePoint. Well, if you're a beginner or you just need a refresher, in this video you're going to see some tools and techniques to improve the way you can manage documents and files in SharePoint Online. So anyway, let's dive in and cover how you can better manage documents and files in SharePoint Online. So let's get started in our global sales area, which is my SharePoint site that me and my team collaborate on. Now, of course, you may be new to SharePoint, and what you're going to see here is we're working in our documents area. Typically, every SharePoint site will have a documents library, aptly called documents, that you'll see a number of files and folders within, and much the same as what you're going to see here on my screen today. Now, we're going to get started with understanding how we can create and upload new files into our global sales area. By files, in my example, we're going to be pretty much focusing on Office files, but of course you can have vastly different files and different file types depending on your requirements. So let's go ahead and create ourselves a brand new Word document inside of my global sales documents area. To do that, head to the top and you'll see a new button, and here you can actually select Word document. In taking this option, we'll be using the Word Online experience delivered through a web browser, and therefore it also works on areas like mobile devices and so forth. Now, the Word Online tool, as it runs through your browser, also doesn't come with a save button. That doesn't mean that your files will never be saved. In fact, it means the complete opposite. As your file changes, it will automatically save back to the cloud. So I'm going to add some content into this document here, and we're going to see how this gets saved back into SharePoint. So we have some content now inside of our Word Online document. You can see in the top left, it is currently showing as saving. And this will happen every time you make a change to the document. It will auto save back into SharePoint. You will also see the document that's been created in this way is currently shown as document free. So it will take the latest number of the file, the Word document, and effectively name it in that way. Not ideal if you're working within a team, of course. So instead here, we're going to go ahead. We're going to make a change by changing document free and rename it. To do that, click on the drop down under document free and you'll see a file name section. Go ahead and overtype that with a file name of your choice. Once you've done that, left click away and that change will then be made. As we can see here, our tutorial document has now been saved back into SharePoint. Now, of course, Word Online could have its own training course actually set up and tutorial. But I was outlined that Word Online is a great experience but doesn't have all the capability of your Word desktop app. So if you're missing capability that you do need and you're not finding Word Online for you, you can open this document directly from your Word desktop on your computer in a couple of clicks. To do that, go to Editing on the top right and then select Open in Desktop App. You will then see that your amazing document has now opened in the Word desktop app, and all importantly, because this document lives inside of SharePoint, you will also see the button in the top left is currently marked as autosave is set to on. That also means that every change you make into this Word document here on our desktop will be automatically saved back to the cloud. No data loss if you accidentally spill coffee over your laptop. Well, let's go ahead and close this document down, and we'll go and also see how that appears in SharePoint. And here now we're back in our global sales documents area. We can see our tutorial document is now appearing inside of our SharePoint site. So we created a document super easy using Word Online, and we also edited it using Word Desktop as well. And of course, if you prefer not to use Word Online, especially with an existing file and want to skip straight to the desktop, there are also options there. From the SharePoint dialog here, you can select the file by left clicking it, so it highlights the file here. And from the ribbon bar, go and select Open with the Word icon and select Open in App. When you do that, it will then open directly using the Word for Desktop app and skip the Word Online experience entirely. But that scenario is great if we're going to be creating a brand new document. But what if you spent a long time creating an amazing document on your computer? How do we bring it into SharePoint? Well, rather than using a new drop down at the top of the screen, we're going to select the upload button and select files or folder if your files exist in a folder and you want to bring them all in at the same time. But here it's just a single file, so I'm going to go ahead and select files. Then from your desktop, you can choose one of the files you want to bring into your SharePoint site. So here I'm going to select my example contract and select open. You'll then see on the right hand side, it's going to upload one item into your folder. Now SharePoint references item much like a file. So whilst it says uploading one item, it's effectively uploading one file. We then see it's also now uploaded the example contract to my documents with this visual indicator here. So we can go and find the file inside of my global sales area, and here it is, my example contract. Again, I could click into the file, I could review the content using our Word online experience. I could also open it in Word for desktop, but a super easy way there to bring files from your local computer into your SharePoint site via a simple method of highlighting those files and bringing them in. Now, in addition, and a quick tip here for you, is if you do go to upload files, you can upload multiple files. For example, if I bring in the two files, I can highlight those together, select open, and they'll be brought into my global sales SharePoint site. Super easy to do. But of course, you're going to want to organize your SharePoint folder in a better way. Absolutely, SharePoint can work with lots and lots of files in a single folder. But ultimately, you may want to organize that so you have quick access to it in the future for you and your team to pick up the right files. And of course, with us being humans, sometimes we like a good structure inside of SharePoint. So to create a new folder, go to the top of your SharePoint site, select new, and then select folder. You can now create a folder with a name of your choice, noting that some characters, like ampersands, are not generally supported. But even if that did happen, SharePoint would tell you, so you can remove that character before you go ahead and create that file. So I'm going to create a folder here with some of our tutorial files that we're going to be working through today. Once you give it a name, go ahead and click on the Create button, and it will now create that folder for you at the top of your SharePoint document library. We can then see again who created the folder name, and when it was modified. We can click into that folder and find there is no content there. Now, as we already covered in today's tutorial, I could go ahead and upload files from my own computer into the folder, or create brand new ones in the same way. But if there are other files inside of that documents area right at the top level, we can also easily bring those files in. So I'm going to bring in a couple of files here, possibly my annual financial draft. We use an example firstly, and what I can easily do is left click and drag that file up into my tutorial files, and I can then move that file into that location. So SharePoint will go ahead and move that file. There are also different ways to achieve that. If we click back and go back into our global sales library here, we can also click into one of our files, and from the top of the screen we can select move to or copy to. If I select move to, once again I get a list of all of my folders. So quite helpful if you're trying to move a file right at the bottom of your screen, you can't find that folder, you can use this option, move your file into the relevant folder of your choice using this dialog. So let's go back into our tutorial files here, and we're then going to be looking at this annual financial report that's in draft. And in this document here, we can also begin making changes to it. Once again, we can use Word Online, or we can use Word for desktop to be able to do that as well. So what we're going to also have a look at now is all around the topic of versioning. So if I make a change to one of my files inside of SharePoint, it's actually versioned in place, meaning I can easily return to it later and also restore existing changes that I may have overwritten in error. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to remove this title for annual financial report and remove the title itself. Now we can see, as we covered earlier, that change has now been auto-saved back into SharePoint. So if I accidentally made that change and then go ahead and then close the document down, that change we made, other people in the team would pick it up next time and realize there is no further title. Now, of course, at which point they might get in contact with you and ask you why you've removed your title and can you restore your change. Well, actually, it's very simple to do that without you recreating the file or trying to work out what went wrong. You can actually restore from an earlier version. Let's go ahead and close down this tab here and go back into our SharePoint library. We can now left click and highlight the file and click on this three dot menu here. When we do so, we'll see a button for version history. Select the version history button, and you'll then see that all the versions of the document inside of SharePoint, from the first version back in November to the most recent change we've just made. So version 4 includes the most recent change where I removed the title. But how do I know that version 3 included that content that effectively I removed in error? Well, very simply, you can just left click on the time and date and you'll see the earlier version of that file through the Word for Desktop app. And as we can see, the annual financial report is there, including that title I just removed. Handily, because Word integrates with SharePoint, it's already providing the ability to do a comparison and a restore. So maybe there was multiple changes. I didn't know what those changes fully were. Well, I can very simply click on the button here for compare, and it will compare this version against the latest version held in SharePoint and identify that I removed the title. I can very simply then close down my comparison result, and what I can then do is select the restore button to restore the change back into SharePoint, and so that change will be restored. But equally, the change I also made where I removed the title, even that will be retained as a version. So even if I got it wrong, the version I just made a change to will also be kept in SharePoint as well. Now, if you're liking this tutorial video, we would love it if you hit that like button and also subscribe to our channel for more great content in the future, which really helps us create more of this content. So anyway, on that note, let's get back into the tutorial. As changes happen to files, we need to understand what happened with them as well. And as we can see, version history does a great job of doing that, but I could actually left click on a file, click on the I button to the top right of your SharePoint screen to open a details pane. This is an often overlooked feature which can tell you what happened on your document. All you need to do then is scroll down and you'll see an activity feed. And whilst this document doesn't have much on it in terms of what I've actually done in activity, you will see changes that have been made to the file, even events like moving the file and also who created it and so forth, all in the activity feed to the right hand side. And that's not only your activities but everyone else's inside of your team site. So very useful way to track changes and to understand who's working on what files without needing to go talk to your colleagues, because hey, who'd want to do that anyway, right? So there you go. You can use the activity feed to keep an eye on what happens on your documents in SharePoint in a real easy way. But what happens if someone deletes your file? So annual financial report here, I can go ahead and delete it whenever I like, and you and your colleagues will have this capability. If you can edit a file, you can also delete it inside of SharePoint, and that even applies to folders as well. But let's go ahead and delete this file. I'm going to highlight the file and click the trash can at the top of the screen, and I'm now going to send it to what's called the recycle bin. The good news is the recycle bin isn't collected and removed from your SharePoint site straight away. So I hit the delete button and it'll now vanish. And now it's vanished, we of course don't know where that file was. It might be you've come into the library later and find there is no such file. Unfortunately, it's not easy to see what's happened here, but once again, applying what we learned earlier, click on the eye icon and we can also see the folder history, so we can actually understand what's happened inside of our folder. And that includes who deleted a particular file. So there's no need to go and play a nice game of who did what with your colleagues to try and work out who deleted it and have that particular person being very slopey shouldered. You can easily identify from the activity feed who deleted it and when. That also means we can get the file back in a real easy way. To do that, we can head up, clicking on the cog icon for your settings, and in this scenario, because of the type of site we're using, we can head into site contents, and there will be then a button for our recycle bin on the top right of the screen. Select the recycle bin button, and you'll now see a list of all the files and folders that have been emptied into your recycle bin. Now you have 93 days to recover a file from your recycle bin. After that, sadly, it's not recoverable and it will vanish from this list. But if I want to recover a file, I can left click into it and select the word restore. Once I've done that, the file will be restored all of its versions in the same place it was deleted from. So if we now go back into our global sales area in our tutorial files folder, we'll now find that file once again. So how do we share files and folders with your colleagues? Well, in most cases, in this scenario at least, the global sales team have access to all of my files. We actually see on the right hand side, it actually says who has access to this file. I can see the people's profile pictures. Alongside, I click on this button for 15 people more, and I would also see who has access for a dialogue. And again, I could browse through that and I could see the relevant people. It might be, however, I need to share a file or folder with someone outside of my global sales team. Does that mean I have to download this file and attach it to an email? And no, you don't have to do that. Instead, you can very simply, either by clicking on the file or folder, you can hover over and you can see this share button here. This is actually a button to share this file with other people. So when I click that link, I can now send a link or copy a link. Send link appears at the top of the screen, allows me to send a predetermined Microsoft email, including comments that I can define. The lower option for copy link means a link will be copied and I can insert it into a Teams message or into an email for someone to click into and access my shared link, but they don't receive a Microsoft defined email. But super important to note is the access rights granted to our sharing link. In some scenarios, this link can also provide too much access without us reviewing the option. As we can see here, my environment is set for people you specify can view. By left clicking into this here, we can then change the type of security granted when someone follows this link. I can very easily then change it to people with existing access, people in Contoso, which is my company I work in. So that would mean that this link could be accessed by anyone in the company who had the link, or people you choose. By selecting people you choose, you can also now define those people by name. If I click apply, we can now see it says people you specify can view once again, and we can begin to type in the people's names. But what if we wanted to provide edit rights to make changes to those files? Well, once again, click into that link and at the bottom, you can select can edit from the drop down rather than can view and click apply. That now will show it as people you specify can edit. And I can now define the people I want to send my email to. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my colleague's name, which in this case will be Megan as an example. Now I've added Megan, I can also type Megan a very nice little message in the message box here. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and click on the send button and an email will be sent out to Megan, which includes a link to that file and my personal message as well. There's no need for me even need to drop her a message or an email. I know SharePoint will do that for me and provide a handy link as well to access that file. Now, in much the same, of course, you may want to review or remove links a little later from the file. You can easily do so in the same similar way. Hover over the file, select the share button, and in this dialog, rather now than us specifying who we're sharing with, you'll see much like an attachment button right at the bottom of the screen. This denotes a sharing link was created when I shared the file with Megan. Let's left click into shared with, and then you'll see at the top of the screen, here's our unique and secured SharePoint link that's been sent to Megan. It might be Megan was the wrong person, which I could easily click on the X button here. I could remove Megan's access, meaning she would no longer have access to that sharing link. Very handy if you send it to the wrong person via an email and quickly want to revoke access. But also if there's a number of people on a sharing link that shouldn't be there, and in fact that sharing link shouldn't exist at all, you can click on the three dot menu next to a sharing link and once again click on the X to remove that link. And as we can see, SharePoint prompts us to say that when we delete this, everyone who used that link will no longer be able to use it anymore. But I go, okay, no problem with that. I'm going to delete the link and I'll remove that sharing link from within SharePoint. So simple ways there to share a file or folder using that sharing dialog with your colleagues. And guess what? It even works for external parties. If your IT team allow it, you can even input an external email address and have that email sent to an external party to share files and folders with them as well. Now also it's very useful to organize our files, and as we can see in this scenario here, we have a couple of pinned areas, being a pinned folder and a pinned file at the top of my SharePoint documents area. Quite handy if you have you and your team needing quick access to files and it's a very large area you're working with files and folders. Now you can easily pin folders and files at the top of your documents area very easily in your SharePoint site. All we have to do is then hover over, left click on our folder name, click the three dot menu and select pin to top. Once we've done that, we can now see our tutorial files appears at the top of the screen, allowing quick access to me and the wider team to click into my tutorial files folder and have quick access. Not only that, we can of course unpin them. So again, selecting the three dot menu, and we can now select edit pin and then unpin to remove the pinned folder at the top of the screen, but a great way to also organize your content in your SharePoint site to provide quick access to files and folders. In addition to better organize your content, you'll see a number of columns in your SharePoint library. By default, you'll get the file name, modified and modified by, but equally, you might have an interest in who created the file originally. So to do that, you can actually click on the Add Column button to the right-hand side and select Show or Hide Columns. In this view, we can see all of the predefined columns of data that SharePoint stores for us. That even includes the file size. But let's go ahead and select Created, Created By and File Size, and then click on Apply. We can then see, we now see the created date and who created the file. So I can very quickly in here, go to the Created button and left click and select Newer to Older to see all the latest files that I've created inside of my SharePoint site. And we can even filter it by who as well. So a great way there to organize your content in a better way and bring in information that SharePoint stores but you can't see straight away when you're using SharePoint. The last area we're going to be covering in today's tutorial is how you can also work with these files and folders on your local computer without having to go nearby the browser. Now all the capability I've shown you today will also integrate with that sync process, so any changes you make will have the same experience when you come back to the browser, including version history and also file deletions as well. Now very quickly, you have a couple of options here. The first is you can click on sync. By hitting the word sync here, we're going to sync all of the files and folders in this documents area or my document library to my local computer. So in doing that, I'm going to be using the OneDrive for Business sync tool, which should be installed on your computer alongside Office. And that will do the whole job of keeping an eye on anything new or updates going into your SharePoint folder will also come down to your computer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the sync button. You'll then see a dialog appears that we're syncing your files. And then if we close this dialog down, that folder will now appear inside of our folder view. If I go into my folder view here and open my global sales documents area, there we go. We have all of our files and folders that now exist on my computer to drag and drop or have quick access into. Once again, using our tutorial files, we can double click into the folder and double click into our financial report to have quick access to it without ever needing to go via the browser. A very easy process to bring all of those files and folders down. And finally, let's consider how we can also search for content. Very easy process in SharePoint to do. Now SharePoint, the way it stores files, it actually indexes all of the contents. All of the words inside of that document are indexed for a search result, and typically within 15 minutes of you uploading the file, it will also be visible inside of a search result. Now to search inside of our global sales document library, there's a section at the top of the screen for search this library. Here I can now search for my financial report just by entering the words financial report, hitting enter, and we'll find the relevant result. Now here we found two financial reports. We'll have quick access into it by left clicking into that file, and we can open it directly from Word Online. So not only will that pick up the content inside of the document, but also the file name. And we can also filter through those results. So super easy to find your content. Now, of course, there is also a wider search experience to search across all of your SharePoint sites. And we can do so by going back into our search box here. And at the bottom of the screen, it says expand the search to all items inside of this site. Clicking that will search across the whole of my global sales SharePoint site to find relevant results. Now I also could further refine my search and search across the organization by selecting the organizational word at the top of the screen. And now I'm doing a financial report search across the whole of SharePoint in my wider company to find the relevant file. And once again, there's our annual financial report in my global sales area. A quick link to get back to the SharePoint site, a link to access that file as well. So very straightforward to do to find your content in SharePoint, both in your SharePoint site, in your document library, and across the organization. And that's it for our tutorial on SharePoint Online. We hope you enjoyed all of that content looking at tools and techniques in SharePoint Online to improve the way that you can work as well. Now, as you mentioned earlier, we would love it if you hit that like button, but even better if you subscribe to our channel. That means we can put even more time into creating great content like you've seen today, and also improving how you work as well through all our different videos. So other than that, we'll be seeing you in the next one.